I mean, I had some misgivings about aspects of ANC policy at that stage. Well, in particular, I had misgivings about aspects of the Communist Party's attitude to Afghanistan and to Poland. And I did voice these at that stage, which is maybe a good thing. But anyway, it meant that they held back for a few years from recruiting me to the Communist Party. They were worried about my attitude to Poland and Afghanistan. But anyway, so I was recruited to the ANC at that stage, and because I only had a few hours really to make the decision, and they, in those few hours, I was given some instant, instructions in what to do. I had to focus a little bit on the military issue. They were worried about that, like try and get some organization going around that, and to send reports, and they showed me how to send the reports. But I mean, that's all they could do in a few hours. So I worked alone for the next year, and I would go and type out reports on a typewriter that I wasn't connected with, and I was told not to wear it. I must wear it, not put any fingerprints on, so I must take gloves, and so I followed those instructions. Didn't tell anyone, and I was dying to tell people, but I didn't. I remember going away we went away when afterwards. Janet Cherry actually was on the trip with me, and we hitchhiked together back, and we went down the coast and that, and I was thinking, should I tell her? And I thought, no, actually I'm told not to tell her, I won't. So I never said a word. Then I was told to come back in a year, and they'd give more training. So I went back a year later, and there were three of us, a woman called Kate Phillip, a guy called Richard Good, and myself, and we hitchhiked up to Zimbabwe a year later. But what happened then was that it was a time of real conflict now beginning to emerge over this whole question of going into the army, because a lot of people had followed, student leaders had followed Oret van Heerden's example, and this was causing real shit with the ANC, and it was bubbling. And I was getting messages from people I thought were probably connected to the ANC to say, look, this isn't the NC's line, Anyway, Kate was connected to the group close to Oret van Heerden, so the NC didn't want to be dealing with her at that stage because they were worried about him. So they waited till she had left, because Richard and I stayed on, and then they asked, well, look, they asked me, do you want to be part of a unit with Richard and somebody else? So we then I said yes, and then Richard and I then had much more intensive training over a period of about 10 days, I think, or a week or so. A bit in ideology and stuff like that. I mean, it was mainly real crap, like, I don't know if you've ever read The African Communist, but no. I don't know what those people were on when they wrote it. But, and we had to read Lenin's What Is to Be Done and that kind of thing, which is the worst of Lenin. Democratic centralism and all those kinds of things. But at that stage, I'd kind of suspended critical thinking. I was like, it was like whatever you say.
Really? You really think you had?
Yeah, I did. I actually suspended my intellectual processes for until the late 80s. And then I started thinking again, and I thought, oh, fuck. But anyway, I even stopped reading novels and things. I mean, all I read was Le Carré and I didn't read good literature. I read those kinds of things. Tom Robbins, those sorts of things. But I'd done all these courses in Marxism and that kind of thing. But now it was like Lenin, and it was taking the line, kind of thing. So what happened then was that so we came back and we'd been recruited. We were trained in counter surveillance, which was quite useful, and we were trained in debugging things, which was, I never managed to master how you were supposed to do this, radio frequencies and and things like that. We were trained in disguising reports, and the most useful thing we had was we were trained in coding. So a very simple method of using a number system relating to a book code. So you would take a passage out of a book, which you would both agree on. You would both agree on whatever the book was, and you'd both have the same edition of that book. Like you take a journal or something like that. We took a particular edition of the South African Labour Bulletin, and then we knew, and then the first letter, the first number would be the page, and then the second number I think would be how many lines down it would be, and from then on, your numbers would correspond to the letters in the book. So the only way of breaking that kind of code is if you can find a copy of the book, which would be very difficult to do. I mean, it's a very good, in terms of computer coding or whatever, it would be much, it would be too laborious. But in terms of for our system, it was a very good system of encoding book codes.